Hello everybody, my name is Spencer Seedeloff and I am a student. Now, I'm no ordinary student, I'm a student who has questions. Namely, questions about the brain, because my major is neuroscience. And so, upon hearing the phrase that exercise is good for the brain, most of us know that, I wanted to know just how good is it? And what can we as students do to take hold of that truth and use it in our lives to its utmost capacity? So I have the hypothesis that doing physical activity before an exam will result in higher cognitive performance, which would hopefully result in a higher test score. This is the alternate. The null would be that physical activity doesn't change our cognitive ability at all. So I found 4 studies that I'm going to go through so that we can figure out the answer to this question. Uh-oh, what are these? They're running shoes. Where did they come from? They came from the first study, a study that was published in the Research Quarterly for Exercise and Sport. Researchers took 51 college students, put them into 2 groups, and they tested them in a lot of cognitive areas. But before they did that, they gave them 2 conditions. One was the control condition, where they were just reading a neutral article just to get the kind of brain juices flowing. And the test treatment was that they had them run at a moderate pace. What they found was that when they ran, they had significantly shorter reaction times and higher word recall on both immediate and delayed free recall tests. Now that's incredible. And that's starting to support my hypothesis that a single bout of exercise will immediately improve some cognitive ability. The issue here is that we don't know what type of cognitive ability. Because the students were able to pick for themselves what they felt was a moderate pace, we don't know how much intensity was influencing the cognitive results. And so, if we want to understand just how important intensity of an exercise is, we need to look no further than a study that was published on the EXCLI journal. The researchers in this study, they took 55 healthy adults, and they split them into 3 categories: control, no exercise, exercise A, and exercise B. Exercise A was only with the upper body, and exercise B was only with the lower body. They did find a big increase in executive function or cognitive ability for those who exercised as compared to those who did not. However, they found that between exercise A and exercise B, there was not a significant difference, which shows us that the most important aspect of getting those cognitive improvements is keeping our heart rate at a zone between 64 and 76% of our max. Now, an issue that I would say I found in the study is that they did not test on people who had mood or anxiety disorders. And unfortunately, a large part of test taking is usually anxiety, and so we don't know necessarily how those effects are changed. Now, in order to understand the relationship between intensity and type of exercise a little bit better, I looked at a study that was published in the Scandinavian Journal of Medicine and Science in Sports, which took 21 university students and gave them one of 3 conditions. Either they did something easy cognitively for 4 hours, something hard cognitively for 4 hours, or something hard but with breaks every 25 minutes of light intensity walks. Interestingly, what they found is that there was no difference in mood or executive function in any of the 3 groups from before as compared to after. And that kind of shows us that the intensity of the workout that we're doing is probably what has a bigger effect on our cognitive difference or cognitive performance afterwards. An issue with the study, however, though, is that because the tests were so long, meaning 4 hours, that might have affected the results that they were seeing in the tests they were taking. The last study that I want to look at is a little bit more specific, but I think is going to help us sift through some of the nuances of the research that I provided and make it a little bit more applicable to us as students. It was funded by a university and was published in the Frontiers of Psychology. They took 75 healthy young adults, and over the course of 10 weeks, they gave them differing treatments with alcohol and high-intensity exercise, sort of similar to what I mentioned in the other studies. What was interesting is that at the end of those 10 weeks, in most of the areas, everybody actually improved pretty similarly cognitively. There weren't really any significant differences between the groups. However, they did notice that with the groups that had high-intensity interval training, there was a large increase in their executive function and in their attention tasks. So that's starting to build a hypothesis, and I want to hopefully conclude this all for you so that we can know how to use it in our own lives effectively. So, was my hypothesis correct? Does physical activity before a test improve the score? I'm going to say yes. However, there are conditions. The first being that it does need to be intense. Your heart does need to be pumping. The second being that you actually need to study before you do the test. You need to know the material. The executive function increase and the retention that you gain is only going to help you with the facts that you know. Doing exercise isn't going to teach you biology. Instead, it's going to help you manage what you know a lot better during the stress of an exam. It's going to help you look at different concepts and connect them and separate them when needed a lot better. So, if you want a higher grade, the science suggests that you should do 30 minutes of cardio. That's tough, right before the exam. Just make sure you shower though, because I don't want to smell you in the testing center, and I'm going to be there for a while.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to pop in here and add some questions that I had upon doing the research. I would be really interested to know just how big of an effect the exercise can have on people who do struggle with things like anxiety or ADHD, and how does it help them focus. All the studies that I looked at were only looking at people that were healthy, it was just healthy adults, and so that kind of probably swayed the results that they could have seen. I'm also pretty interested in knowing how long does the brain boost last. So if I do a workout like 8 hours before my exam, will it still have an effect? Or do I need to do it as soon as I can before the exam to get the cognitive benefits? So, yeah.